It was supposed to be a fun weekend getaway. My friends and I had planned a camping trip deep in the woods, far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Little did I know this adventure would turn into a nightmare I could never forget. We arrived at the campsite on a Friday afternoon, excited to set up our tents and start our outdoor adventure. The air was crisp, and the forest seemed to embrace us with its serenity. As night fell, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and roasting marshmallows. But as the night grew darker, strange things started happening. I could hear rustling in the bushes and distant howls echoing through the trees. My friends laughed it off as the sounds of the wilderness, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease creeping up my spine. Later that night, while everyone else was asleep, I decided to take a walk alone. I needed some fresh air to clear my head. As I wandered deeper into the woods, the moonlight barely pierced through the thick canopy above, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. That's when I heard a low growl, followed by the snapping of twigs. My heart raced as I realized I was not alone. I tried to calm myself, convincing myself it was just a wild animal passing by, but the feeling of being watched lingered, sending shivers down my spine. I quickened my pace, trying to find my way back to the campsite, but the woods seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, and soon I realized I was lost. Panic began to set in as I stumbled through the darkness, desperately searching for familiar landmarks. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me, heavy and deliberate. I turned around, expecting to see one of my friends coming to find me, but what I saw froze me in terror. A pair of glowing eyes staring back at me from the shadows. I ran as fast as I could, adrenaline coursing through my veins. But no matter how hard I tried, the creature seemed to be gaining on me. I could hear its ragged breaths and the sound of claws scraping against the forest floor. Just when I thought I couldn't go on any longer, I stumbled into a clearing and saw the faint glow of our campfire in the distance. With renewed hope, I sprinted towards it, praying that my friends were still there. As I burst into the campsite, gasping for breath, my friends looked at me in shock. They had been searching for me, worried sick about my sudden disappearance. But as I tried to explain what had happened, I realized how absurd it sounded. No one believed my story, not then, not ever. They chalked it up to an overactive imagination fueled by the darkness of the woods. But I know what I saw that night, and I'll never forget the chilling sensation of being truly alone in the heart of the wilderness. It was a stormy night, and my parents had left me alone at home for the first time. They had to attend an emergency work event, promising to be back before midnight. As I waved them goodbye, a sense of excitement mixed with apprehension settled in. The house felt strangely quiet as I settled in for the night. The howling wind rattled the windows, casting eerie shadows across the walls. I tried to distract myself with movies and snacks, but the creaks and groans of the old house kept pulling me back to reality. As the hours passed, the storm intensified, unleashing its fury upon the neighborhood. The power flickered on and off, plunging the house into darkness. I lit candles and huddled in the living room, feeling a growing sense of unease creeping up my spine. That's when I heard a faint scratching sound coming from the attic. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I told myself it was just the wind playing tricks on my mind, but as the scratching grew louder, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. With trembling hands, I grabbed the flashlight and cautiously made my way up to the attic. The stairs creaked beneath my weight, adding to the ominous atmosphere. As I pushed open the attic door, the scratching sound stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence. I shone the flashlight around the dimly lit space, my heart racing with fear, and that's when I saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me from the darkness. I gasped in horror, unable to move as the creature advanced towards me, its ragged breaths echoing in the silence. I stumbled backwards, desperate to escape the attic and the nightmare within, but the creature was relentless, its claws scraping against the wooden floor as it closed in on me. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and ran, blindly making my way down the stairs and out of the attic. I barricaded myself in my room, praying for my parents to return home soon. But deep down, I knew I was alone in this fight. The creature prowled the halls, its presence a chilling reminder of the horrors lurking in the darkness. Hours passed like an eternity as I waited for dawn to break, and finally, as the first light of morning filtered through the windows, the scratching sound ceased, and the house fell silent once more. My parents returned home to find me shaken but safe, unable to comprehend the terror I had endured alone in the house that night. To this day, I can't shake off the feeling that something evil had invaded our home, that stormy night of presence that lingers in the shadows, waiting for the opportunity to strike again. It was supposed to be a typical Friday night. My parents had gone out for a dinner party, leaving me home alone for the evening. At first, the prospect of having the house to myself seemed thrilling. I could watch movies, eat junk food, and enjoy the solitude. Little did I know that night would turn into a terrifying ordeal I would never forget. As the hours passed, the house grew eerily quiet. The television flickered in the dimly lit living room, casting long shadows across the walls. I tried to distract myself with my phone, scrolling through social media to pass the time, but a nagging sense of unease lingered in the back of my mind like a whisper of impending doom. As midnight approached, strange things started happening. I heard footsteps echoing in the hallway, even though I knew I was alone. The floorboards creaked under an invisible weight, and the air felt thick with an otherworldly presence. I tried to brush it off as my imagination running wild, but deep down I knew something was terribly wrong. Then the power went out, the house was plunged into darkness, and a wave of fear washed over me. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to navigate the shadowy corridors. That's when I heard it, a soft, sinister whisper, barely audible above the sound of my racing heartbeat. "Alone?" it whispered, a chilling voice that sent shivers down my spine. Alone in the dark. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Was I imagining things, or was there really someone or something in the house with me? I felt a primal urge to run, to flee from whatever unseen terror lurked in the darkness. But I was paralyzed by fear, rooted to the spot as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. With trembling hands, I crept towards the front door, desperate to escape the suffocating embrace of the house. But as I reached for the doorknob, a sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut, trapping me inside. Panic surged through me like a tidal wave, threatening to consume me whole. I raced through the house, searching for a way out, but every door and window seemed to be sealed shut, as if by an invisible force. The whispers grew louder, filling the air with their ominous refrain. I was trapped, alone in the darkness, with no way out. Hours passed like an eternity as I huddled in a corner, praying for morning to come and release me from this nightmare. And finally, as the first light of dawn filtered through the windows, the whispers ceased, and the house fell silent once more. My parents returned home to find me shaken but safe, unable to comprehend the horrors I had endured alone in the house that night. But deep down, I knew that whatever had visited me in the darkness would always linger in the shadows, waiting for another opportunity to strike.